Hello everyone, as promised I am back with another lecture, and this time we are going to focus on current affairs, exclusively looking into bitcoins and its possible effects in India. For those of you who are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Shobna Menon. Thank you so much for dropping by. I really appreciate it. Please go ahead and subscribe to my channel by pressing the subscribe button below. Now, to gain an understanding of bitcoins, we first have to understand cryptocurrency. What exactly is cryptocurrency? Cryptocurrency is a virtual currency, that is currency associated with the internet. So the currency that you are dealing with on a day-to-day basis is in the form of cash and coins, and that is physical currency. Cryptocurrency on the other hand is a currency that you cannot feel or touch. It is associated with the internet. Now cryptocurrency uses a process called cryptography, which is defined as converting legible information into an uncrackable code. So cryptography involves encryption, which helps converting information into a secret code which is accessible only to the authorized user. So if you are an unauthorized user and if you try to open up the message, you will not be able to do so because it is encrypted, right? Now please understand that cryptographic payments are divided into centralized and decentralized payment systems. Let us look into the centralized payment systems for now. Now, what exactly is a centralized payment model? A centralized payment processing system will involve one body that is managing the incoming and the outgoing transaction between two transacting parties, that is the buyer and the seller. So this one body is called the trusted third party, and this entire model is called the TTP model. This trusted third party is responsible for certifying the transaction between the buyer and the seller and ensuring the genuineness of the buyer and seller. So in India, you have come across various TTPs in the form of MobiKwik, Citrus Pay, Paytm, Freecharge, SBI Buddy, ICICI Wallet. So these are the various examples of TTP in India which you must have used in one or the other way while making an online payment. The question that you have to ask is, who exactly regulates these TTPs in India? The answer to that question is the RBI. The Reserve Bank of India regulates the TTPs. Now, who or what rather empowers the RBI to regulate the TTPs? The piece of legislation passed by Parliament called the Payments and Settlement Systems Act 2007. So this law empowers the RBI to regulate the TTPs, especially section 4 of the act specifically mentions that no other body other than the RBI can authorize bodies to authenticate or mediate within the payments and settlement system framework of the country. Now RBI is a very big body with a lot of responsibilities. So it has delegated these powers to a subcommittee called the BPSS, and the BPSS stands for the Board for Regulation and Supervision of Payments and Settlement Systems. And the BPSS has the following functions, which is to formulate policy, set standards, authorize the payments and settlement systems. So if there are new innovations that have come across, so they have the decision to authorize it, determine criteria for membership. So if you have to become a TTP tomorrow, you have to approach the BPSS for membership. Of course, it also has the ability to reject or cancel your membership at any point of time. So this is the ultimate body that is controlling the payment and settlement systems in India. So what we have come to understand is that the payments and settlement systems in India is fairly centralized. Now coming on to the decentralized model. What exactly is a decentralized payment system? Absence of a TTP can be considered as a decentralized model. So basically the buyer and the seller just interact with each other without going through a TTP model. So basically this means that a model which allows equal sharing, equal access of information with each other, with a bunch of users at the same time, is a decentralized network, and such a network is called the peer-to-peer network, and Bitcoin functions on the peer-to-peer network. Now Bitcoin was invented by a person called Mr. Satoshi Nakamoto, and Satoshi Nakamoto invented Bitcoin on the basis of certain flaws that he observed in the TTP model. The first flaw he said was that there is a possibility of reversal of transactions taking place. So, when the buyer got the goods of the seller and when the seller received the money from the buyer, there is a possibility that the money which the seller received can be reversed back to the buyer's account. So, not only does the buyer have the goods purchased by the seller, but he also has the money that he paid to the seller. So that literally amounts to fraud or theft. This happens when the TTP model cannot be trusted, if it is untrustworthy. Another flaw is because there is a possibility that the reversal might exist, seller these days are very much cautious and they end up asking for more information from the buyer than what is required. So in order to be completely sure that the TTP can be trusted, sellers end up asking for information like the social security code or Aadhaar or voter ID. So this literally violates the privacy of the buyer. Now, what Mr. Satoshi Nakamoto has said is that Bitcoin offers complete anonymity and complete irreversibility of transactions. So, you don't even need to part with your name if you're entering into a Bitcoin transaction, right? Now, in order to understand the advantages and disadvantages of the Bitcoin's presence in India, we first have to understand the mechanism on which Bitcoin functions. To understand the mechanism, you have to understand two sets of circumstances that I shall present to you. Circumstance number one, assume that I am on Amazon and I am making an online payment and I have 1000 rupees in my bank account. I use 500 rupees to purchase a dress. So obviously the balance that I have left with me is 500. Now, what if I enter into a second transaction and I go ahead and buy something else worth 800 rupees? Will it let me? No. Why? Because there is a database somewhere in the country that is recording each and every transaction that is taking place in my account. So suppose if my bank is ICICI, so the database in ICICI is keeping track of each and every transaction that I'm making. That database in turn goes to a larger database that is maintained by the RBI. So basically there are centralized bodies that are monitoring and updating and maintaining a ledger of every transaction that is being maintained by every individual or every organization within the country. So there is no way I can make a payment of 800 because they have recorded that the balance left with me in my account is 500, right? So I will get a pop-up called insufficient funds in bank account. So I will not be able to proceed with this payment. So in Bitcoin, there is an absence of such a central database. Circumstance number two. Suppose I took a physical note of 500 rupees and went to a store and I purchased a dress worth 500 rupees. Now, is there a possibility that I can use the exact same 500 rupee note to make another purchase? I have given this 500 rupees to the cashier and she has kept it inside her vault. Is there any way that I can use the exact same note to make another purchase? No, absolutely not, unless I steal the money from her, right? Now, these are the flaws in Bitcoins. The first flaw is that there is no centralized server keeping track of people's Bitcoin accounts. Because how else will a person know that how many Bitcoins does a person have to pay, right? Another is that Bitcoin is actually a code and codes can be copied and pasted. So if I have made a payment of 5 Bitcoins to A, I can easily copy those codes and paste them and make another payment of 5 Bitcoins to B. Who is there to monitor me? Who is there to question this transaction? So these flaws are actually remedied and taken care of by a mechanism called the blockchain technology. So what exactly is the blockchain technology? If there is no central server keeping track of my bitcoins, then who does it? The answer is everyone. Everyone is keeping an account of what transactions I am entering into. So basically, there are people across the planet who are sitting home at their computers, and each computer is called a node, and they are verifying each and every Bitcoin transaction that is taking place. And transactions are essentially grouped into a bunch of transactions, and they are grouped into a block, and each block is a puzzle. The person who is first to crack the puzzle will be rewarded, because this is not community service, right? Nobody is going to verify each other's transactions for free. They are doing it for a reward. So there is a block of transactions which is accompanied by a puzzle. If you crack the puzzle, you are rewarded with fresh bitcoins. So people who do this, people who sit at homes and solve these puzzles and verify transactions, are called miners, right? And they are rewarded for verifying each and every transaction. So the thing about fresh bitcoins is, in RBI, there is the ability of printing innumerable number of transactions. RBI can print billions and trillions of rupees, but bitcoins can be generated. Fresh bitcoins can only be generated if it is mined by the miners, right? So that is, mining is the only way to generate fresh bitcoins out of the system, and this mining can be done by solving the puzzle, cracking the block, which is then verified by other miners, by the other nodes. So this is essentially the explanation of blockchain technology. It is a public ledger. It is a public ledger. Everybody is maintaining an account of what you're doing, right? Now please understand that these miners have specialized software and hardware. So you can find that hardware anywhere in an Amazon store and you can buy it. So basically it's not the miners who is solving the puzzle. They have specialized hardware which is solving these algorithms, right? And this hardware is operating 24/7 every day, and this is a big hit in China. The largest number of Bitcoin miners come from China. Okay, now how much fresh bitcoins do they get for solving each and every puzzle? Around 12 and a half bitcoins. So BTC is a short form for the Bitcoin currency. So every time they solve a puzzle, they are rewarded with 12 and a half bitcoins. Now what you have to understand is that RBI has the ability to print innumerable currency, but in bitcoins there are only 21 million bitcoins which can be produced in the entire lifetime of the software. So Satoshi Nakamoto has programmed the Bitcoin technology in such a way that only 21 million bitcoins can be there in the system, which can be mined by the miners. So as of February 2017, 75% of this 21 million has already been mined. So only 25% is left in the system yet to be mined. The thing that you have to understand is that as the quantity of bitcoins to be mined decreases, the complexities of the puzzle increases. So there will be a stability. This is an automatic stability mechanism that Satoshi has designed, so that it won't be over all in one day. So as and as the quantity of bitcoins that is left to be mined decreases, the complexity of the puzzle increases, right? So it will take more and more time for the miners to crack the puzzle. Now the thing is that if two people A and B are entering a transaction, B will get the money from A only when this puzzle is solved by some miner somewhere. So basically a puzzle takes around 10 minutes to solve. So which literally means that a transaction takes 10 minutes to get confirmed, right? So That is how the mechanism for Bitcoin works, right? So if you just wanted to know more, which is not really important, but there are two sets of keys that are given to every individual. So A will have his public key and private key, and B will also have his public key and private key. And so if A is giving bitcoins to B, he will sign it with his private key, which is his digital signature, and send it along with his public key, and only and only B can open it with his private key. So he can, so this is a address. So public key of B serves as an address to send his bitcoins, and B can open that transaction with his own private key. So basically there are four keys involved, right? So this is a cryptographic message which nobody else can crack. Okay, so it is opened by the sender whom it is meant for. So this is the mechanism of Bitcoin in the simplest manner. As far as UPSC is concerned, you don't need to go into deep. Please understand that. But it is a very, very complex arithmetical algorithmic infrastructure. And for UPSC, this is more than enough for you to understand that it functions on a peer-to-peer network, and the backbone of Bitcoin is blockchain technology, which is nothing but a public ledger where everybody is confirming your transaction. So suppose if I, if I use this mechanism again, suppose I copied a piece of code, suppose this happens, okay, suppose I copied a piece of code and sent it to B. So what will happen is that they will, so the Bitcoin miners will take the first transaction and they will group it into a block with other transactions, and they will verify it. So suppose if I had around 7 Bitcoins in my account and I gave 5 to A, that transaction where I'm giving 5 Bitcoins to A will be grouped in a block along with all the other transactions in the world, and that will be accompanied by a puzzle. Some miner will crack the puzzle, and he and the other miners will verify. So they are verifying that I have made a transaction of 5 Bitcoins to A, and they will confirm it. Now this second transaction where I have copied the same Bitcoin code to B, that will be a part of the second block, and the miners will again crack the puzzle and they will start verifying the transactions, and they'll be like, hey, wait a minute, she can't do this transaction has already happened, she doesn't have the balance to make another 5 Bitcoins to B, because I gave 5 to A, right? So I'm supposed to be left with only 2 if I had initially 7. So they will reject it and call the transaction invalid. So this is a foolproof mechanism, the blockchain mechanism, right? So this prevents counterfeiting. So this is the essence of blockchain technology, right? So after understanding the mechanism, we can safely go ahead with the advantages and disadvantages of the presence of Bitcoin with respect to India. So talking about the advantages, the first one is that there is no transaction fees. So in India, we have online payments in the form of NEFT, RTGS, IMPS, which charge anywhere between 2 to 25 rupees for every transaction, which can be very expensive for a user if he wants to make a big generous payment to another party. In Bitcoin, there is no to negligible transaction or processing fees involved, which is great. Another is the no exchange rate involved. So any businessman who is constantly making payments or receiving income from abroad always has this headache of fluctuating exchange rates across the country, across the world. So in Bitcoin, there is no such problem involved because Bitcoin is a uniform currency. So it doesn't have to be exchanged to make another Bitcoin payment anywhere in the world. So you can easily pay anything in Bitcoins, whether you're in Germany or India or France or China or Africa, it doesn't matter because the value of the Bitcoin will remain the same. Another advantage is that it cannot be manipulated. Bitcoin currency can never be manipulated. So usually Indian currency is manipulated either by Indian government or governments abroad. So especially we can see this when the US federal rates hike their interest rates, and that hiking of interest rate has a big effect on the Indian currency. The rupee stumbles and the stock exchanges sort of have a bearish effect, and the Indian economy is hit. So Indian currency has that possibility of being manipulated by other governments and by our own government, whereas Bitcoin can never be manipulated by any other government or currency. The value of the Bitcoin can only and only be decided among the users themselves. So the users have the ultimate power. Another advantage is that it can never be counterfeit. It has come to understand that out of every 10 lakh notes that have been circulated in India, 250 are counterfeit notes. Of course, the advantage for the seller is that there are no refunds. So that is one thing that is positive for the seller. So he doesn't have to like repay. There is no mediating agency. So once he has received the funds, he has received it. There is no possibility of a refund. So that is a positive for the seller if he is doing business. Let us move on to the disadvantages. Now, the first and the foremost disadvantage is the digital penetration of payments in India. So we are quite aware of the fact that most of India is rural India, and people in India do not, people in rural India still do not have the hang of how to use an ATM, let alone net banking or IMPS. So, making them understand the concept of bitcoins at this stage is going to be very complex. Another problem is that Ponzi schemes can take place into effect because of the lack of awareness among consumers regarding bitcoins. So, consumer awareness is necessary. If the bitcoin user is not aware of how exactly does it function, then he can be let into any scheme that will offer him gold within 25 days or something, and he might end up investing into it, and he might be cheated, and he might end up using all his bitcoin money because of the lack of awareness. So this is the first advantage, the lack of digital penetration, existing digital penetration, and the lack of consumer awareness. The second is transaction delay. So I have already explained this to you, that the more and more, the lesser the bitcoin availability, the harder the puzzle. Now as of right now, it takes 10 minutes for a transaction to get confirmed, because it takes around 10 minutes to solve a puzzle. So the confirmation of a transaction takes around 10 minutes. Now the puzzle will eventually become harder and harder and harder. So it is said that the 21 millionth bitcoin will be mined in the year 2140. So that's how complex it is, that it will take these many years to come to the last millionth bitcoin, right? So this will end up making the transaction delays even longer. So maybe there's a possibility that it might end up taking 1 hour for a transaction to complete. So transaction delays is another disadvantage. Third is it is extremely volatile. Of course, we have seen the bullish and the bearish markets. Sometimes it is above $10,000. There is a possibility that it might fall down below $8,000, $5,000. So volatility is something that Indians cannot digest because they want a stable currency, and we are a developing country. So stability of currency is required for economic development. The fourth is high consumption of electricity. Now, as I have mentioned, that there is sophisticated software and hardware that miners use to mine the fresh bitcoins. Now, the more sophisticated the hardware, the higher is the consumption of the electricity by that particular hardware. So this was actually a problem in China, where the electricity consumption shot through the roof at one point of time later this year, and the Chinese government had to start controlling electricity rates, because like I said, the largest bitcoin miners come from China, and they ended up using huge amount of electricity to mine these fresh bitcoins. So it's environmentally unsafe. The fifth major disadvantage is that it is untraceable. Now we are quite aware of the fact that India suffers from the black money problem, and the thing is that 62% of the GDP, or 14 trillion US dollars, is actually circulating within the world as Indian black money. That is the amount of black money that is circulating as of now. And we are quite aware of the fact that black money funds organized terrorism and human trafficking, which is the two major problems that India faces constantly. So there is a possibility that the untraceability will end up becoming a paradise for for black money transactors, and the crimes, organized crimes, might end up increasing because of the untraceability, the anonymity that Bitcoin offers. The sixth is that it is non-refundable. So it was a positive for the seller here, but it is a negative for the buyer here. So the buyer has to be extremely sure to ensure that he is not being taken for a ride by some Ponzi scheme artist, and he has to be extremely sure that the address that he has copied is correct. So that is non-refundable. The second last one is that it is unregulated. Now, basically, Bitcoin functions on the principle of self-interest. So miners are putting those values of Bitcoins against the dollar depending upon the supply and demand. So it is completely unregulated, which means that it has no place for the interest of the common man. Monetary policies in India, on the other hand, are framed by the RBI and the government to ensure that the common man is taken care of with respect to inflation and interest rates. So there is absolutely no appetite for interest of or welfare of the citizens of the country. Bitcoin does not offer that. The eighth disadvantage is that the underreporting of taxable income in India. So basically, the status of Bitcoin in India currently is that it is not illegal. Please note that it is not illegal, but it is definitely unregulated. So we have not yet decided whether to classify it as a commodity or a currency. So investments can be done in Bitcoin, and because there is still doubt on whether to report Bitcoin as a commodity or a currency. So as a result, there leads to underreporting of taxable income. Currently, India has a Bitcoin share. So the amount of Bitcoins that are being transacted from India is around 0.5% of the existing Bitcoins that have been mined in the world, mined and exchanged. So that is quite a large amount if we come to think about it, even though the percentage is quite less. That means that India is showing a risk appetite. They are new to open technologies, but it might take a while for this figure to increase. So after understanding the advantages and the disadvantages, let us go on to the possibility of other cryptocurrencies. Yes, we have Ethereum, which is involved in smart contracts. We have Litecoin, Monero, Ripple. So there are so many other cryptocurrencies, but are not as popular as Bitcoin. We have noticed that there was a surge in the end of 2017. So basically, there are a lot of reasons why Bitcoins was suddenly in use, even though Bitcoins was introduced in the year 2009. But suddenly it came back into the news in 2017 because earlier till now only small individuals and retailers were trading in Bitcoin. But there is a group in Wall Street called the CME group, which is exclusively dealing in derivatives, and it came out with derivatives exclusively for Bitcoin. And that is when the huge companies, investment companies, big financial companies started to step in and started investing in Bitcoins. So there is a possibility that this led to the surge in the prices. Another is that you must have heard of a concept called IPO, initial public offering, whenever a new company enters into distributing shares. So this led to a similar concept called the Indian currency of initial currency offering. And basically this means that new currencies, that are cryptocurrencies that are being released, are now traded on this platform called the initial currency offering, which is very popular in China, but it was banned and shut down by the Chinese government. So this created a big rage among the people to start investing in cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoins. The second reason is finite supply. Like I have already mentioned that the total number of Bitcoins in circulation is only 21 million. So there is a fear of missing out. Once the 21 millionth Bitcoin is mined, there is no more left for people to invest in. So people suddenly started investing for the fear of being missed out. The third is China's appetite for Bitcoins. I have already mentioned that the largest number of Bitcoin miners comes from China. This has actually generated a lot of employment, even though the Chinese government is against it and it has banned cryptocurrencies. But this must have definitely played a factor in increasing the big rage that you saw at the end of 2017, right? The countries that are currently accepting Bitcoins are US, some countries from the European Union, Canada, Finland, Australia. Please note that they are not legal tender in these countries, but they allow it to be a mode of payment. The countries that are not allowing cryptocurrencies are some countries from the Middle East, especially Pakistan. We also have China. So there are countries which are blatantly against the use of cryptocurrencies. So what we've come to understand is that cryptocurrency is still at its very, very nascent stage. It is still at its early stages. We are not quite sure what will it lead to, especially when it comes to the question of inflation or deflation. People are still not aware what exact effect will it have on the economies of the country, but we are quite sure whatever it is, the first hit will be to the Bitcoin users. What we will be facing, people who are not invested in the BTC, they will be facing the indirect effects. Another thing is that the governments around need to start adapting to this new technology, and the Indian government has actually gone to this step. The Niti Aayog has been known to go ahead with a project of cryptocurrency called Dakshin. It is tentatively codenamed Dakshin for now, which is a good news because governments are constantly in the need of adapting to new technology, which also means that we need to develop new technical infrastructure, which also ends up meaning that we need to give more opportunities to the Indian youth to develop this infrastructure. So, education and funding in research is very much required. If you have liked this video, please go ahead and like, share, subscribe, and comment. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.